Hey folks, Kwe. My name's Ed Travers. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of Christchurch-Shelburne that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today, I want to talk about a tweet that a friend of the channel here that they sent me, something that Tommy Lauren had said. She was going on about immigrants crossing from Mexico into the United States, undocumented immigrants. She was going on about sanctuary, that we have no business, the United States has no business offering sanctuary to these people. Now, on more than a few occasions, we've talked about undocumented immigrants. We've talked about people seeking asylum, seeking help, and seeking refuge in the United States in whatever capacity that may appear. But as I read her tweets and I read the responses and I read the stuff that people were saying, what occurred to me was the danger of those invisible lines we draw in the sand. Those lines that we draw and say, you must not cross this line. This arbitrary line, this line that has been agreed upon by nation states saying, these are the boundaries. And I began thinking about how those lines represent our limits. They represent our, not only do they represent the limitations of our nations, that line is where Canada ends and where the United States begins, and vice versa, that this line is where Nova Scotia and New Brunswick begin and end, that Quebec and New Brunswick, or Maine and Quebec, or anything like that, that these lines that we've drawn in the sand actually have grown to be a representative of the limits of our love for our neighbors, that somehow these lines tell us who and who is not our neighbor. I mean, again, we've said it a million times that we are called to love our neighbor as ourselves, that we are called to love one another as Jesus has loved us. And yet, when somebody from the other side of that line steps on our side of the line, we immediately judge them to be somehow unworthy, unwelcomed, unwanted, that we exclude them, that we see them as undeserving of our assistance. Those lines have grown to represent just how far we will allow our love to travel. Because they come from the other side, we see them. Well, honestly, I think we see them as we've been instructed to see them, as somehow evil, dishonest, bad, tricky. We see them as thieves. We see them as baggage. When did Christians begin believing that we are only supposed to help those who help us? When did we begin believing that we aren't supposed to help people who come from the other side of the line? When did we begin seeing each other? And by each other, I mean other human beings, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of who they love, regardless of the language they speak. When did we begin seeing other human beings as baggage, things that are weighing us down? Does this sound like a sound teaching of Jesus Christ? Does this sound like a sincere, truthful, authentic interpretation of any words that Jesus has ever uttered, that were ever recorded in the Gospels? Love one another so long as you don't feel that they are weighing you down. Love one another so long as you don't feel like they are costing you too much. Love one another so long as you don't feel like they are somehow infringing upon your ability to thrive. People are not baggage. We are not baggage. And when we draw those lines, whether it's a national boundary, whenever we draw a line that we use to judge other people, we will always, and I promise you this, we will always and continuously draw those lines closer and closer and closer to ourselves, so that we will exclude more and more and more people from our love. We will exclude more and more people from that commandment that we are supposed to love our neighbor. Remember, Jesus didn't make a suggestion. This was a command. Love one another as you love yourself. So we draw a line and say, okay, so long as you're within the borders of our country. And then we draw another line and say, okay, yeah, but so long as you live within my neighborhood, or so long as you have the same color of skin as I do, so long as you believe a particular theology that I do, or so long as you obey a particular law like I do, or so long as you are against a particular law like I am, we will continuously draw those lines closer to ourselves, and we will continuously exclude others. There are to be no limits on our love. None. This isn't an easy call, right? This isn't an easy call in our lives, that we are supposed to love without limits, without boundaries, but we are supposed to love without conditions. Jesus doesn't say, listen, I've got a nice, easy thing for you to do. Love everybody like you love. No. It's really, really, really difficult. But we are to love beyond borders, whatever those borders may be. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. Let's start erasing borders. Let's start erasing the borders that we've drawn. Let's start erasing the borders that we've sketched out in the sand to keep others away. I pray God gives us the courage to do that. Amen. Nemultus.